Welcome to Popternative, where we dive into topical discussions from the worlds of pop culture, social media, and sports. Here is your host, Peter Remoliotis, aka PD Beats.
PD Beats here from Popternative, speaking to Breeda Wool about National Treasure, Edge of History, premiering on Disney Plus December 14th. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
I mean, this is so exciting because I remember when this project was announced. Like, no cast. Like, I just remember we were getting a continuation series of National Treasure, which is like one of my favorite movies of all time.
Oh my gosh.
Has it hit you that it's finally coming out? Like, it's pretty crazy, right?
Man, I gotta be honest. So we had our premiere last Monday.
Yes.
And we shot this in Baton Rouge, and it's very interesting in television and in any project where you blood, sweat, and tears the experience, and then there's a huge lull.
Yes.
Where you're just chilling, and post-production's doing their job, and every once in a while you go in to do ADR, and then it's the premiere. And the premiere, Catherine Zeta-Jones and Lizette Oliveira, and everybody showed up. Even the crew was there. We had our second IDs were there. Like, so many people from the set were there, and it was a party. It was amazing bat mitzvah.
It's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy too, because I feel like you worked on so many projects and had those big kind of premieres in anticipation, like Mr. Mercedes and Unreal. Like, so you've kind of, this is not your, like, I don't know if you can ever be like used to like when a show officially comes out, but this concept of like, it's yours, like it's the crew and the casts. And also, then like Catherine on the 14th, it's not,
Catherine Zeta-Jones is like the queen of red carpets as well. I mean, she's the one that shows up in like the outfit at the Oscars. So like to see, I've been on some pretty fun red carpets, but it's all like, the concept
of
show
a
up
show,
in a gown on a red carpet.
But it's interesting too, because what I was going to say is that the concept of like it being like, it's basically like after the 14th, like it's out of your hands, basically, like it's disseminated into the world. Right. And I feel like that concept of a show will never not feel crazy, right? Because my point is you've done that before. You've been through that with Unreal and Mr. Mercedes, right? Where you're waiting, it's out there, it's out of your hands. But I don't think you can get used to that concept, right?
It is the part where it's out of your hands is the fun part for me. Like the part where you just abandon your control over any situation. And part of my job is to sort of relinquish control to a story or something greater than you. It's almost like I don't have any like foundation and spirituality, but there is a bit of when you make art and you pass it on, it's no longer yours.
Yeah.
It's now like anybody who's sitting in their house or on their cell phone or on their computer,
pop on Disney Plus.
Anyone who's putting on Disney Plus and watching this, it's now yours.
Yeah,
it's yours. And I think the weird thing about, I used to do theater and I used to do a lot of live performance in New York. And the weird thing about TV is that I don't get to experience other people experiencing what we made. And so I guess on Wednesday, when everybody, or during this premiere on the 14th, I am hoping that everybody sort of like, I don't know. I'm like, there'll be a part of my little heart that's like, are you out there? Just enjoying, experiencing.
You can't hear all like the sighs and like the, oh my God, like, cause I was talking to someone about this with theater, right? We're like, I never thought about this. I'm sure you think about this a little bit more than me, cause I did stage crew for like my high school productions, but like you're doing the same production for a week, let's say, right? But there's a different audience every week.
Different audience.
I didn't even think about that. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, so someone might have like a gasp or like a sigh to something that you do as a performer that they didn't do, that you didn't have like the week before. And I feel like that's a crazy feeling.
I remember in Mr. Mercedes, like, we had a fun premiere, but I didn't really get like, Unreal was like people were, coming up to me on the street and being like, Faith,
oh my God, yes.
But with
everyone
Mr. Mercedes
still is pushing for faith. All right,
exactly,
day,
exactly.
Right?
I'm like, I should probably go on a reality TV show as host and just try to win it.
Dancing with the Stars or something.
I traveled to Paris right before the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I was like trying to buy a scarf or something, as you do in Paris. And, a girl came up to me and was like, she was like, you are Mr. Mercedes,
Yeah.
And that feeling of National Treasure is a globe. People love this all over the world.
Yes.
People love the movies all over the world. And that feeling of like global observance of a fun, exciting, silly, historical fiction, goofy, the Wibs.
It's a treasure hunt. It's a treasure hunt.
It's an action movie for nerds is basically what like.
When you were cast for this, Breeda, did it feel like a unique opportunity in the sense that there was familiar territory because it was a very coveted film, but then unfamiliar territory because it's like a continuation with like characters we've never seen before and stories we've never seen? Because I feel like that is a unique kind of opportunity for all the cast, right? Like being part of a project like this where it's like a continuation.
I mean, I read what some of it was, and it was like, I'm basically bad guy number 2.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, who's bad guy number 1?
Mm-hmm.
And my reps were like, Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Zeta-Jones. Yeah.
And I was like,
okay.
Yeah, I'm in. Yeah. I'm in. That would be a yes for me. I mean, that was basically how and I was like, oh, I don't know, it's like during the pandemic and I just had a baby and like I was like, oh man, going to like relocating in Baton Rouge. I was like, I don't know. And then my rep sent me a photo of Catherine Zeta-Jones, like reclined on a couch, like,
yeah.
And I was like, great. Great. I'm in.
It's so crazy to like, so, I mean, I have to ask, like you set me up for a layup for this question. Like, what is it like working with Catherine Zeta-Jones? Like, what's that like? And you have this banter back and forth in this show that's really awesome too. And like, what is that like?
I mean, she's wonderful. She's wonderful. My biggest takeaway from making this was the absolute joy of working with Catherine Zeta-Jones, and also the kids like Lisette Oliveira, like Antonio, that they're so, Lisette especially, like this is her big debut. She's done work before, but like this is her to be number 1 on a television show right out the gate and have the poise and talent and just grace that she did, and then having Catherine Zeta-Jones also like exhibiting that on set. It was a very and Zuri as well is like, and the two of them together. And when I remember I saw a rough cut of some of the episodes and I was like, this is a show about female friendship. And this is a show about, Zuri and Lisette in this are just extraordinary together.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, working with Catherine Zeta-Jones is totally badass.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm hoping that somebody out there is saying to Catherine Zeta-Jones, hey, what's it like to work with Breeda Wool? And then she can say that I'm a fucking queen. No, but she is an absolute she's a dream.
Well, I will say when there were like interviews for the season of Unreal that you were on, like I watched a lot of them because I watched all of it on Lifetime. Like, I loved that series, and like
that show is so good.
Your faith was brought up like a lot in interviews, even when it wasn't like it was like that was a big faith was a huge part of that season, right? So in a sense, people could be like, what can you tell me about faith? Well, it's like working with Breeda, so it did happen before.
The sacrificial lamb of reality TV. I know, when you're like you're set up to.
It's so strategic the whole season too, and you feel so bad, and you're like, oh my god, and like
yeah. I know, the battle for Rachel's soul.
I've interviewed a lot of people that were on The Bachelor and The Bachelorette, and obviously, there's a lot of the things that are like, okay, well, like Unreal did, like, that was like very like over the top and insane, but they were like, there's some things that were like pretty accurate on that show.
I mean, Sarah Shapiro worked
as
a producer on The Bachelor, so. Yeah, I mean, Rachel.
Like I don't know if like how
taken from a
season,
cut
I
of
don't
her
know how
cloth.
I don't know if how season 1 ended actually, like stuff like that happens. I would
I don't know. There was. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's
I don't
just
know either. I had never even seen The Bachelor until I did that show.
I know it's so crazy. But it's interesting because my next question I'm really excited to ask you is you can answer this from your perspective of Unreal, of Mr. Mercedes, and of National Treasure Edge of History, because I'm very interested, Breeda, in the audience member. The audience member interests me because there's like two different audience members these days, especially in the era of binging and the era of streaming services, where there's like the active like viewer and the passive viewer, right? Where there's like the passive viewer that can just sit back, relax with their phone, put on an episode of The Office, not really pay attention, you know what I mean? And you have like the active member, where like you have to be
Yeah, where they're like,
buckled,
shh, the show's on. Yeah.
phone down, paying attention. If you think about it, all three of those shows I mentioned, you have to be active. You're going to miss out on stuff, which I think is interesting, right? Like Mr. Mercedes, Unreal, National Treasure. Like you have to be those are three shows you worked on that are like active audience shows.
You know what? I'd love it if somebody was like playing SimCity on their phone while watching Mr. Mercedes, and then they look up to see like the Brady Hartsfield and his mom like engaged in like carnal sin.
But you know what I mean, though, right?
Yeah,
It's
he was like,
interesting, right? But it's interesting,
What?
right? It's interesting though, the active versus passive, like like whoever's gonna watch National Treasure is gonna like think like they could just like sit back, relax, and have a good time, and like. But I feel like if you really like, you got to be dialed in for this show. That's what I loved about it. I feel like you're strapped in like on a roller coaster. You have to like go in for the ride. You have to be all in my
It
opinion,
is
with this.
really fun.
Yeah.
It is really fun. I definitely was like, ooh, this show is fun. This is gonna be like a and also, you know, we're seeing episode 1 and 2 and then 3, but like the show, you know, there's something challenging when you're introducing a show because there is a lot of setup.
Yep.
You know, any show that you see, the first few episodes, especially of a dynamic where the characters are such a important part of like Lizette's character in this is you got to know who she is. You got to know who she is through and through. But when that, like, you know, the series only gets amplified and amplified and amplified, like the temperature, the speed, the everything gets turned up as the series
Well, I think
goes.
that's natural a little bit too, because you're kind of setting things up. I feel like the first 2 episodes does a very good balance. And it's funny you mentioned that, because the more I think about it now, after you just answered that question, it's like it does a very good balance of like it's setting things up. You're meeting these characters, but it's also has enough of that kind of like high octane kind of adventure roller coaster component of it, which is really well. But like it's always like the hardest part, I feel like, for in terms of writing stuff too, as like a writer, is like you got to introduce these people.
Yeah, the Wibbs the Wibbs are, it was really fun to work with the Wibbs because they're, you know, I mean, they make television as well, but like, you know, the series is a feature film. The series has an incredible
it's very cinematic, 100%. Yeah, absolutely.
Very cinematic. And the you know, it's like Better Call Saul is one of my favorite series, you know, and that has a pace through. And like, you know, I was just watching the finale of White Lotus last night.
Me too. I was wrong.
Like,
I was wrong, by the way. I didn't know. Like, I never. Spoiler alert! I never like the person who ended up being dead. I never called that, even though it seems like it was obvious. Like I was wrong. I don't know about you.
I was very agitated.
Were you wrong though? Like, did you predict that, or were you right? Like about who it was?
You know, White's writing. What's his name? White. Yeah.
Mike White.
Mike
wrote
White's
the greatest movie of all time, School of Rock. Sorry. Yeah.
School of Rock was shot at my college. I was in college.
That's my favorite movie. That's my favorite movie of all time.
Oh, really? Like half my department was like in the extras in that movie. Like that's my college that movie was shot in.
That's insane. Horsewater Elementary.
Wagner College on Staten Island. But you know, Mike White's writing, what I find when I watch his writing is I'm not necessarily seeking the ending.
Yeah.
So there's a side of me that's like, just tell me what happens. And then, but a lot of it is like, actually, I'm just going to watch waves for
This,
an
but you
extent.
see,
I'm gonna
it's
watch
funny
Waves
because
for
this
30
one was
seconds.
like, no, like I want to know who it is. Like this one was like,
There's a side of me that's like that, but so much of his stuff is about like feelings. Like he
yeah,
writes. It's such a. That's why I think his writing is so extraordinary, because it's like subtext. Like he is writing a single show with a linear, and then he's writing this subtext of extreme emotion, and so that's why he has these like long breaks of like waves crashing and like panning out with like a sunset with really over the top music.
yeah.
Because it's like you're supposed to be following an emotion through the thing, and it's very intense. So in one end, I'm like,
Talk about being an active audience member, right, for a show like that one.
I'm an absolute. I don't even. Because I can see all the bells and whistles. I see
Yeah.
like every single aspect, and my partner is a composer, and so now since he's started doing films and television, I'm like so dialed into that aspect of it, and
It's crazy. And I can't wait for people to see National Treasure Edge of History premiering on Disney Plus December 14th, which is going to be awesome. It's going to be an event. Everyone's going to be able to watch it. Breeda, thank you so much for joining me on Pop Turner. It was so great chatting with you.
thank you so much. I love being here with you. I appreciate it.
No, it was so much fun. And is your Instagram account just your name? Is it just like Breeda Wool?
Yeah.
Pretty much. Then they could.
Yeah.
Okay.
My Instagram is my name.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a and you'll definitely see me on there.
Yeah,
I'm not
absolutely.
exactly a fancy Instagram. I'm just like, hello, here I am on Instagram.
I'm on Instagram. My show, National Treasure with Catherine Zeta-Jones, is available on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
I'm Faith from Unreal.
Hi, I'm Faith. I'm on Instagram. Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Well, this has been Pop Turner, youtube.com/PopTurner for previous episodes. Until next time, this is Breeda Wool and PD Beats signing off.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube. Be sure to like Popternative on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.